In 1905, Stark Street, running through downtown Portland, Oregon, only ran as far as 12th Street, now 12th Avenue. Today this stretch is known as Harvey Milk Street, while still called Stark on the east end of the river. And in the March of this year, 1905, the City Council suddenly expressed the expedient need to extend Stark from 12th to 13th Street, coming out where it intersects with Burnside Street. Despite this expediency, it would take more than 20 years before this one-block extension would finally happen. It's kind of funny, as in the midst of this 20-year period, a call was made to extend Stark Street a whole lot further than just one block. In fact, it was a plan that would have led to a several-mile connection route between the heart of downtown Portland and the once somewhat isolated community of Linton to the north. This long-delayed extension of Stark between 12th and 13th would ultimately present some of the conflicts that would also happen with the primary subject matter I will be discussing in this video, a sort of foreshadowing. In this case, there was strong resistance from property owners in the vicinity of this proposed extension, until they saw that it would likely lead to an increase in their property value. And then the property value in the area increased regardless. So then, the local property owners became restless, wanting the city to get this thing done. But little did they know that they'd be waiting a long time. And the funny thing is, in recent years, this extension is no longer open to traffic and has been transformed into a gathering place for pedestrians, which I personally love. More than 7 years down the road from the introduction of this one-block extension idea, it was November 1912, when people started thinking a little bigger. A suggestion was made at this time that it might serve a benefit to the city to extend Stark Street beyond 13th Avenue and across Burnside diagonally, and have it continue on in a northwestern direction all the way to 19th Avenue. Considering the time, streetcars were still the primary method of transportation for a lot of people, and it was felt this extension could help with streetcar traffic on the lines running along 16th and 19th Streets. So, at first, that was the primary focus, just a little extension with streetcar benefits. And like with the 1905 planned extension announcement, property owners in the vicinity of where this extension would have taken place were a little less than supportive at first, not elated at the idea of a street cutting right through their land. Many people were also not particularly excited to have another diagonal running route like, say, Sandy Boulevard on the east side, with its sharp and wide intersections along with its oddly shaped buildings. Despite this early resistance, come January 1913, only weeks later, property owners started petitioning in favor of this possible extension, citing the project as a matter of great public importance and benefit. Certainly their potential personal benefit played no part in their actions. But quickly this project started gaining speed, to the point that potential cost figures were already being calculated, with this extension projected to cost in the neighborhood of $500,000. But despite gaining ground, it was just a suggested possibility at this point that needed to make an impact with those in power before it moved forward. While the possibility was up for consideration and never formally rejected or forgotten, it would be another year down the road, February 1st, 1914, that things started getting a little more official. In a detailed report published in the Oregon Daily Journal, things had extended further. Now, instead of running between 13th and 19th, the proposed extension was now set to run several blocks more, coming out in the vicinity of 26th Street and Cornell Road. And there was a very specific reason for this. No longer was alleviating streetcar traffic the only concern in the matter, but rather it had shifted towards creating a direct connector route between the epicenter of Portland's downtown commercial district via Stark and Cornell Road, one of the few main routes connecting Portland with towns on the west side of the Tualatin Mountains, such as Beaverton and Hillsborough. The start of Cornell Road, as it is today, is a little odd, and the streets are still set up the same way. The one key change that's happened is that the first original stretch of Cornell, which branched off 23rd Avenue and Burnside Street, is now known as Westover Road. So here is Westover Road, and right down there at the corner, it wraps off of 23rd near Burnside and starts coming up this way. And this used to be a stretch of Cornell Road. This way you can look back at old maps and be like, where's Westover? Well, there's a simple answer for that. It used to have a different name. You can see this is Flanders and Westover. And so yeah, it used to climb up this way. And it's very interesting. Oh, this is cool. Anyway, it's very interesting. It's very interesting when you see what happens with the road up here. It's just kooky. As we move along, we're pretty much headed directly towards where, logistically, Cornell Road, where it exists today, starts as it branches off of Lovejoy near 26th. So we're headed right in that direction. You'd think we'd just connect right to it and keep going if this used to be part of Cornell. And here we are, still climbing. We're like a block and a half away from where Cornell Road starts today. So it's like, cool, we just go right through here and Cornell's like right on the other side. And then you get to this point and you see there's nowhere for the road to keep going. That may look like a road, but that's just the entrance to somebody's driveway. No, you follow the yellow line. What happens is Westover, and Cornell did the same thing when it was here, it turns. And then it starts going like in a south-southwesterly direction. This is where Westover turns and starts winding up into the West Hills. So it's just an interesting decision. So about a block short of where Lovejoy meets the Cornell Road of today, it suddenly turns in a southern direction and continues on into the hills. Even as I videoed walking through here, I did not yet know the full past of why Cornell was like this. Looking back, to no surprise, Cornell Road did once upon a time pass through here unobstructed, as we can see in old maps. For example, this map from 1889, and then this map from 1894. In these, we can see that Cornell ran unobstructed up until its turn and departure into the hills of what is now Forest Park. We can also see that it originally started directly off of 23rd and Burnside, which was formerly Washington Street. It now starts off of 23rd, just north of Burnside. And we can see, a few years on down the road from those late 1800s maps, in this 1915 map, things have changed and Cornell no longer ran straight through. Why this change happened appears to have been a redevelopment of the land, as the three houses that stand today between Westover and Cornell all just happened to be built in 1911. Why does any of this matter in our case? It shows that by 1911, a straight path to Cornell from Burnside no longer existed. Granted, going down, say, 23rd to Lovejoy and then up to Cornell wouldn't exactly have taken a fortnight to accomplish. But again, during this time, we were still in the early years of the automobile, and many people were still traveling by foot and most often by streetcar. Travel was still slow and/or restricted for lots of people, and thus direct routes to certain locations were more sought after. A Stark Street extension would provide a direct route from Burnside straight to Cornell, and the relief for streetcars would just be an added bonus. It might also have relieved traffic along Burnside, between 13th and 23rd, which again was still Washington at this time, by diverting more people to the northwest along Stark Street. And it was a further added bonus that this idea fell in line with the Bennett Plan for Portland put out in 1912 by architect Edward Bennett. A key element of his plan was to have several arterial routes in the city to allow for easier traffic. And yet, even back then, it was clear to at least some that this Stark Street plan was going to do anything but alleviate traffic. In a piece from November 1912, when the project was brand new, a, quote, property owner in the area, as he identified himself, wrote, "Cooch Addition is nicely and uniformly laid out, so why cut our already too small blocks into small angles? If we begin this confiscation of property, why not go through the beautiful Trinity Church property onto the hills? Why stop on 19th Street? Every property owner that I have consulted says no, emphatically, for this proposed extension would begin nowhere and end nowhere." At the time this was written, the plan was still only to extend to 19th, so the owner was rather astute when he asked, why not go beyond there? From the beginning, running from 13th to 19th, things were initially set to end at 19th and Everett, and this made sense as the area around downtown, aka where the whole city started, has been known for having small city blocks. But beyond 19th, going west, the blocks are longer. Because of this, running between 13th and Burnside on up to 19th and Everett, the extension would cross at intersections every 2 blocks running east and west for every 1 block running north and south. But with the blocks longer beyond 19th, from that point on, the extension would cross 1 block east and west for every block running north and south, a 1-to-1 ratio. Ultimately, over this extension between Burnside and Cornell, it would cross over 10 different intersections. Sounds like a future traffic nightmare to me, but they couldn't know how much back in the mid-1910s. And that said, let's say we take a modern-day look at where this extension would have been. Here we are. Street, formerly known as Stark Street, now Harvey Milk Street. I'm walking in a west on on Harvey Milk. It's almost kind of more a northwestern direction. And I'm making my way east. I always make sure to let people know exactly where I am and what direction I'm going, because I actually have a lot of people that watch my content who aren't from Portland, so, this could just be any other random city to them. So we're gonna have a little fun here. I'm going to, best I can, obviously since this route didn't exist, a lot of stretches would literally be going right through the middle of buildings, and I don't have that kind of power. But I'm gonna take us down as best I can the general route that this extension would have followed, to show you how people would have managed to get from, you can see kind of the heart of the city, commercial area, way up north to, the objective was to get to Linton, but going along the route that is now Leif Erikson Drive would have actually taken you even further north beyond that. This is the old fish grotto building that they've actually like fixed up. This was all kind of walled off for a long time. So that's cool. These all used to be, I mean, I really don't know the state now. I know some of them were low income housing, but a lot of these places were, used to be like really seedy apartment. I mean, a lot of them were hotels that kind of turned into seedy like residential hotels. I know at least one murder's happened in this one. This one, I don't know so much. And here's Stark and 12th right here. And this is where Stark used to end, and it took forever for them to finally get an extension through to 13th. And now today, there's no extension anymore because this is just a place for people to gather and eat. Yeah, even this, it's associated with McMenamins now. This hotel used to be down for a long time. But yeah, it's really cool through here. I like that this has been kind of transformed in this way. And one reason is because this intersection, I have to start coming into 13th and Burnside. I mean, it's just a train wreck waiting to happen. So it's better that this stretch is closed off anyway, but they've managed to like do something productive with it. There's a lot of, restaurants, obviously, McMenamins, Crystal Hotel, Crystal Ballroom's right here. And it's just a good place to have something like this. And then you come out and here's where Stark formerly ended, right here, Burnside, and then 13th is this crossing street. And this is kind of where our adventures sort of begin. And this is a pretty interesting intersection historically. It's known that Clark Gable lived near this intersection. And then this black building over here is where the most famous version of the song Louie Louie by the Kingsmen was recorded. It was recorded in this building. But for our sake, Stark, hello bicycles, Stark came out here, and before that even happened, they were literally going to start going due this direction. Diagonal. If this building was here at the time, which I'm not sure if it was, Stark would have just cut right through that. And so this is where we get started. This is where, I guess you could say at least the southernmost portion of the planned extension. This is where it would have originated. And so the way I'm going to do this the simplest way I know how, which is, starting here, coming this way. This extension would have cut across many intersections diagonally, just like this one. I mean, imagine this being like a 6-way intersection. That's what it would have become. So I'm just going to go to each intersection and kind of show, where the extension would have come out, where it would have crossed, and where it would have started going through another building. And like, for instance, right here at 13th and Burnside, like it would have cut right through here, right through this building, and started going off that way. And the next place it would have come out at would have been 15th and Cooch, which Cooch is right down there. 15th is right across I-405. So after cutting through that building, it would have come out probably, pretty close to where these two buildings meet, and would have just kind of kept cutting through here, and then ultimately come out and would have crossed right here at 15th and Cooch. And according to plan diagrams of the route, it would have crossed right over at this intersection right here. So if the project had happened and that extension was still here, which I have little confidence it would be, since it would have been just such a cluster as the years went by, it pretty much would have been crossing, like we got Cooch crossing I-405, we got Burnside right there, and it would have just been kind of in between. There would have been just like 3 overpasses just rammed together. But yeah, we're still walking on Cooch. 15th is the crossing street right here. So you can imagine it cutting through there and coming right through here and crossing right over and continuing off in that direction. So this is the Cathedral school that takes up a lot of this space. So the extension would have cut right through this land. So there would have been a street kind of just cutting right through the middle of this parking playground area. And it would have come through here and it would have come out at, so this is 17th and Davis. So again, since 13th and Burnside, we've gone 2 blocks north, 4 blocks west. And it would have crossed right over this intersection. And I'm about to do the same because this is an interesting opportunity where we can actually kind of, again, it wouldn't be in a straight diagonal line to 19th and Everett. It'd be a little bit more an angle like this. We can actually kind of walk in, I guess, footsteps, even though it really doesn't count. Tire steps, tire tracks of the Stark extension. It would have been a little bit more at an angle like this. You can even see we're already kind of going a little far afield of where a diagonal route would go. Oh, I thought this went all the way through. I don't think it does. So anyway, that's fine. I just got to wrap around. So the Stark Street extension cut through some of that parking lot. Probably would have gone through about where this fence is between this home and this business. And it would have been going straight for 19th and Everett. So once again, we're kind of sort of back in line with where the extension would have been. And then we would have just blasted through this building, even though based on the architecture, there's no way this building was here back in the 1910s. And also, it's so sad that this building is just sitting here wasting away. But that's a complaint for another day. So here we are, 19th and Everett. As the extension continues, we would have just gone right through here. And at this point, again, it would have started becoming, you know, for each intersection that got crossed, it'd be 1 block north and 1 block west. So this brick apartment building, it would have been coming out right here, cut right across this intersection, and would have sliced right through this cool building. Kept on heading that way. And here's the old, this is the old Cooch School building, built 1912, 1913. Lingering around here, and you see it's, as we get closer, like 21st to 23rd is more commercial, so you start having a few more people and more businesses go through a fluctuation of changes just through where this extension would have been. And it would have been just a little ways down there cutting through, and God, there was a woman sunbathing out there. She probably thinks I was creeping on her. I'm like, I didn't know you were gonna be there. That's why I quickly turned away. I was like, nope, that's not intended. But it would have come out the front of this Blue Moon place, and it would have cut right across 21st and Gleason, right through that building right over there. Alright, so we're now at 22nd and Hoyt. Kind of becomes a little bit more residential again. And yeah, the extension would have cut right out the side of this building and would have cut right across the intersection here, continued going in a northwestern direction. And we're getting close. We're just a few blocks away from where the actual extension would have ended, even though the idea was to connect it to another street and keep it going. That addition to the top of this house is just horrible. But anyway, yeah, it would have come, I would be like standing right in line with it right here, and it would have just kept on going. Yeah, we're coming to 23rd now, so once again, it gets a little bit more commercial, because, you know, 23rd is a primary commercial stretch. A lot of just fun little shops and whatnot. And then once you cross that, it starts shifting more residential again. Figured crossing 23rd would be the hardest one. There was just so many people right there. I was just like shoulder to shoulder with people. So I was like, I'm just gonna get a quick clip
and then continue on. But yeah, it would have cut through back there, and it would have been cutting across this block behind me. It would have been going behind these homes, headed off towards 24th and Johnson, our next stopping point. So here we are, next block down. Sorry, I'd come in from a different direction. I've been coming in kind of next to the block you're crossing. So I normally would be coming in next to this blue building, but now I'm across. So after crossing 23rd and Irving, I almost said Hoyt, that's not right. It would have cut through 24th and Johnson. It would have cut right through here, cross this intersection, and cut right through this nice, charming little home, and continued on in the direction of 25th and Kearney. I called it Kearney because that's how it's logically spelled a few videos ago. But yeah, okay. So I know now it's Kearney. Onward. So yeah, it would have cut right through this block and up towards 25th and Kearney, right up here. So here is 25th and I almost said Kearney. Kearney. So yeah, right where this house is, this little wall here would have cut right through here, and it would have meandered generally that direction, because it would have been cutting towards 26th and Lovejoy, and Lovejoy is the next street down, so you can kind of imagine this disgusting street going through here. All right, so here's 25th Place. So yeah, it would have cut kind of across here, and this would have been right up here. This would have been pretty much where the actual extended portion of Stark Street would have ended, because Lovejoy and Cornell is right here. So it would have come out kind of right here, right across this lawn, because maps show it connecting kind of just before, and it would have turned this into like kind of a big open intersection as it was angling in, at least according to the maps, the diagrams. Who knows exactly how it would have looked. And then right here where the road turns, you got the FedEx truck going, and all this traffic coming down. That's Cornell as it is today. So Lovejoy continues up this way, Cornell continues on this way. So Stark would have extended 13 Burnside to connect right around here, and now traffic could go off and start going up Cornell.
While this plan still remained in the planning stage, carrying over into 1915, it found further support from property owners in the area who, while seeing a street running through their land, they also saw an added commercial stretch, likely lined with businesses in the future. And thus there was potential. And, of course, the projected cost of the whole thing grew, as was going to happen, since the area covered had extended from what was originally suggested. At a July 7th City Council meeting, the Council authorized the preparation of plans for this project, moving things one step further. And by this point, the property owners had become so invested that they willingly agreed to pay for this work. Granted, they were to be reimbursed if the project did finally happen. But get ready. The full scope of this extension plan, as of this moment, had yet to be fully realized. While an extension in and of itself would end at Lovejoy and Cornell, the concept of an extension was about to advance far beyond that. For the moment, the extension could help lead people west through the West Hills, but what about providing another route north? At this time, the only clear route north of the city was along St. Helens Road, running the same route that Highway 30 does today, while still generally being called St. Helens Road. It was the one way to reach places north of town, like Linton, Burlington, and further along places like Scappoose and St. Helens. So another route, even one running fairly close to St. Helens Road, could have been beneficial. The problem was, once Cornell Road went into the hills, it traveled due west. And there also happened to be a deep canyon to the immediate north of Cornell, kind of an obstruction. So what idea did the people come up with? November 1915 arrived, and with it, the idea to build a bridge right across the canyon and over Macleay Park below within that canyon. The idea was that the bridge could veer off of Cornell, cross that canyon, and connect with an Aspen Avenue, a residential street today in the Willamette Heights neighborhood that ran along the border of what is today, again, Forest Park, before ending at Thurman Street shortly before that street itself ended. Once upon a time. An impressive planned structure, the bridge to cross the canyon would have included multiple arches and been made of steel and concrete. The street crossing would have been at a width of 36 feet, with 6 feet wide sidewalks on each side. At the highest point, it would have run about 190 feet above the canyon floor, and the project as a whole would cost in the ballpark of $135,000 to $150,000. At this time, the fairly young Macleay Park was described as almost inaccessible, as it hadn't been developed much and didn't have great access points, in particular along an immediate route from the center of town. Getting people up Cornell and providing access to both sides of the canyon made the park just that much closer to being more accessible. But there's still a question in all of this. If Thurman Street ended near Aspen Avenue, where the bridge was to cross, then why build an expensive bridge just to run a few extra blocks? Well, it just so happened that by 1915, some big things had been going on in those hills of the future Forest Park. Lots of small residential developments planned out to give locals a new place to live in the hills with beautiful views surrounding them. And a road was going to be needed to run through the hills to get people to these planned homes. Construction on a primary route conveniently began in 1914 and was completed and officially opened to the public on July 5th, 1915, only 2 days before the City Council agreed to further planning on the Stark Street Extension project. This route would be named Hillside Boulevard and run several miles through the hills as far north as Germantown Road, just a short distance from Linton, and even St. Helens Road. That bridge would have connected the Stark Cornell portion to the Aspen Hillside portion, and a through route could directly connect the commercial center of Portland with communities beyond the city to the north. So while there was an objective to connect people from middle of city, commercial center, to places far north, by connecting it to Cornell, you gave people a quick route to get to one of few roads here that actually went through the West Hills and got you to places like Beaverton and Hillsboro and Forest Grove if you wanted to go that far. So it would have had a kind of a double purpose by connecting with Cornell. Some steady traffic on Cornell today. I'm not used to seeing it this backed up. Cornell started to turn off. We're starting to wrap more up in the direction of getting further up into the hills, and we're headed towards, it's not too far off, one of the tunnels that Cornell goes through. And the next primary location we want to get to is actually just beyond that. I never noticed this. It's a good time to find out. I never really paid attention beyond the point that it turns off.
we got this little, Cornell keeps going that way. We got this little three-way intersection. This actually makes sense now. This is where Westover comes out. Never knew that was where it came out. That actually makes so much sense now. Yeah, Westover, coming out and around, you know? Spent so much time thinking about the beginning of it, I never thought, where does it end? Like I said, historians make new discoveries every day. Unfortunately, there's no sidewalks here. So you kind of just gotta make your way up on this little gravel patch. But the tunnel is just around the corner. All right. We are now approaching the tunnel that Cornell goes through, cut under as part of the hillside. I've been up here, if you watched me long enough. The video I did about the guy who disappeared mysteriously, but a bunch of his important stuff, like his will, was found on the hillside here. That's where this happened, or where that happened. So I came out and spent some time out in this exact spot for that video. But for our case, people go up the extension, get onto Cornell, weaves its way up here, and prior to this tunnel existing, because Cornell existed long before this tunnel did. In fact, it was built, it says 1940 up there. That sounds about right. Cornell used to actually, you know, logically went off and around the hillside. So, God, is that the same FedEx truck? I've had a FedEx truck pass me like 30 times. So Cornell used to actually wrap around here, which is pertinent to our story because the plans for this project predated this tunnel. So drivers using Cornell would have gone through here instead. And right over here, way down there, this is known as the Balch Creek Canyon, the land that Danford Balch owned, famously the first person publicly executed in Portland back in 1859. So traffic would have gone through here, but if you were capturing the full essence of the experience in terms of covering the whole route that was planned out for this project, you wouldn't be traveling along too much further along Cornell Road itself, because Cornell, you know, starts continuing off west, but the objective was to get people north. Now we're wrapping around the hill to reconnect with present day Cornell Road. I've even seen some descriptions actually refer to this as Old Cornell Road. Hell yeah, brother. I mean, how else do you respond to finding a random Budweiser can out in the wilderness? So, pre-1940, Cornell Road would be coming out, wrapping around through here. So just for a frame of reference, there's the tunnel. So I just came out from there. And you see this little rock wall here. Well, so I put my life on the line. According to where Aspen would come out, right here, right where this, kind of pretty much where this patch of whatnot is, this is where the turnoff would have been, leading people, and it would have worked. I mean, for people coming from the west, out Beaverton way, they could come in this way. People coming from Portland, they could come through this way, and they would have turned off right here onto a bridge that was planned to cross the Balch Creek Canyon. And look, just to commemorate it, there's this big slab. This reminds me of, what was it, conglomerate rock, when you take geology classes, where just a bunch of different rocks just mashed together. That's what it reminds me of. So, yeah, the bridge. Oh my God, there's bugs everywhere. I'm gonna try to get through here. There's no signs. This is park property. Just try not to let any weird poison oakish stuff touch me. There's not really anything here. I just want to get to the point of this tree. And you're overlooking the canyon. Get a full view. Ooh. Ah! Sorry. Yeah, we are right on the edge here. Try to imagine it. Look, started here. Bridge. Big bridge just right across here. Can you envision it? Because I sure as hell can't. And the big canyon down below. And Witch's Castle it's somewhere down there. Yeah, and so it would have crossed over the canyon right here and connected with Aspen on the other side. It's just wild to think. There could have been, and it was a fairly elaborate bridge for its time. It would have been a nice bridge. It wasn't just going to be something thrown together. You've got to make it look nice. And it would have been right here. Yeah, so you're coming in from Beaverton, you're thinking going into Portland, you're like, nah, you know what, maybe let's take the scenic route. Let's go north. Right along the river. How do we get there? Oh, here's a bridge. Takes us right that way. And of course, there was a practical reason for wanting to put the bridge specifically here and to have it connect with Aspen on the other side. And that is because of what was also, a fairly new project at this time, which is present-day Leif Erikson Drive, and it was Hillside Boulevard back then. It was also referred to as the Linton Road. Some things referred to it as Hillside Drive. So the whole objective was to get people from Stark to Cornell, get them across this bridge to Aspen, connect to Hillside, and take it as far north as you needed to go. So obviously we're not done. We've gotten to the south end of where that bridge would have come out. People coming south could have come out here. People going north could have gone that way. We obviously need to get to the other side to see where the bridge would have come out had it been built back there. So fortunately, because the thing is since there's no bridge, I got to get to the other side of the canyon, and I don't want to take forever having to get there. But fortunately, I found a nice little cut through that'll get me to Thurman Street, which crosses. There actually is a bridge there that will cross the canyon there, kind of at the entrance to Lower Macleay Park, and then I can go straight up there. So a bit of hill climbing, but at least there's a cut through without me having to meander forever. All right, so here's my little side journey to get to Aspen a little faster. Is we've got, I think this is 30th, no outlet. Well, that's fine because I don't have a vehicle. This should zigzag me right over to Thurman. Well, ain't it just charming in here? I'm on Quimby, as in Ramona Quimby, because there's a Ramona and a Quimby Street. Tying into all that Beverly Cleary stuff. And Quimby kind of sort of ends, or kind of, I don't know if it becomes a private drive or what, but there's a sidewalk that kind of veers off of it. Yeah, see, everything kind of just ends here. But for my sake, I can go where vehicles can know. Oh, or I could just go through here. I didn't see this sidewalk either. God. Yeah, for like 3 blocks, just straight downhill to Thurman. And I guess it keeps going straight downhill from there. But this is as far as I'm going in terms of going downhill. Well, that did a number on my knees. That was not fun. Oh, it feels so good to just be on regular ground again. And here we are, crossing the Thurman Street Bridge, the one bridge that does exist over the canyon, albeit towards the end of it. And Lower Macleay Park goes off that way. The bridge would be kind of just off over there. The climbing. I went so far downhill coming down from Cornell to Thurman. But I gotta, which way am I? This way. I gotta compensate for it now. Getting close. If I'm correct, the Cullen home that was used in Twilight is right over there. Ooh. Now this is a grade. Ooh. I shot up that hill. And my body is not happy with me. All right, we made it to Aspen. Not the town, but the avenue. I may have left one of my lungs on that hill back there, but we're still here. And turning this corner is where we head in the direction of where, had this bridge ever happened, it would have come out. Now there's, homes between the edge going down into the gulch and the street. So I know there's a trail over here. I might be able to get a view behind things, but yeah, so the bridge would have happened dead ahead. Would have been where the opposite opposite side of the bridge came out. It would have connected to Aspen and continued on this way towards present-day Leif Erikson. So this is where it would have come out. It would have gone right through where this house is. Apologize for the deep breath. That was a lot of hill climbing. Whew. And so Holman Lane is here, and this leads you into Forest Park. So maybe I can kind of get a view through here behind these homes that are here now. Kind of see generally what it looked like in the, well, at least from this angle, down into the canyon. Yeah, I don't know how much of a view I'll get. It's the Wildwood Trail, I believe, coming through here. Maybe it was further up there. The houses are kind of, they end like here, and then things start going downhill through there. So the bridge would have just been coming in right here and connected with Aspen Avenue. As I was walking around, for the life of me, I couldn't remember if it was Aspen Avenue or Aspen Street, because I know it technically goes north and south, so it should be Avenue. But it kind of veers, and it's like, what is it more of? I'm not out here enough to remember. But yeah, through this brush, y'all might have seen a bridge once upon a time, had any of this project actually happened. So the bridge comes through Aspen Avenue, and it might sound crazy today, especially to locals that know this little area better than I do and probably see the exact amount of traffic that specifically is on Aspen. And to think once upon a time this may have been converted into like a primary route to get people from one place to another. So after crossing the bridge right behind me, the idea was to keep people on Aspen till it ended, because it ends right before Leif Erikson Drive. And it's fun, you're getting to see a collection of different little pockets of town, different vibes, different auras, whatever word you choose to use. I mean, we started on Stark Street in downtown, and now, look, we're way above town. See, on the one hand, it's so nice, the idea of being able to live right across the street from Forest Park. And then I'm seeing all the signs up that are saying, don't leave valuables in your car. Smash and grabs happen all the time. And I'm like, I guess I don't have a car, but still, I guess it's in the eye of the experience. It's easy to say, oh yeah, this would be perfect. My life would be perfect if I, bee in my hair. I'd be like nothing would go wrong in my life if I lived on a stretch like this. Well, it's probably in part because you haven't lived on a stretch like this before, aka me. It's still pretty though. I can still revel in semi-misguided dreams. Here's where Aspen connects with Thurman. So this is where people experiencing the full adventure of going on this extension, they would have come down off of Aspen and dumped onto Thurman and kept going this way. Here is where Thurman ends and Leif Erikson begins. Hence the gate, no more traffic. And again, once upon a time, this was Hillside, and it was built during the 1910s, and it was going to be this main route. I'm not walking this whole thing, it's like 11 miles, but this was built with the intention of serving as a primary road through present-day Forest Park here. And they wanted to develop all this land, put a bunch of, well, not down there so much, but put a bunch of homes in, and there was like, well, there has to be a way to get there. And so they started thinking about putting in a main road. There were some older roads. Of course, they're escaping my mind now. Springville, Saltzman, and those ones kind of cut across east and west, but we wanted something kind of zigzagging north and south. And that is where Hillside here came into play. This was going to be a main route that took people north through, well, it wasn't Forest Park at the time, Forest Park of today, and would take you way up north, coming out, I believe it comes out at Germantown Road, or at least that's where the vicinity of where it comes out today. So even a little bit north of like the St. John's Bridge, I guess northwest. Yeah, when I first stumbled onto this thing, I saw one little diagram leading, Stark from 13th to 19th. It went from this little, maybe there's something here. Look at this little extension. That could have been it. That might make an interesting little video. And then when all is said and done, it brought me all the way out here to Leif Erikson Drive. That was how much, that's what happens to plans sometimes. They start as something simple, and then someone takes that simple idea and expands on it a bit, and then someone else comes along and is like, well, why stop there? Let's just keep going and just have this massive connecting route. And I mean, I didn't walk the Leif Erikson portion. I'd have been out here all day and probably snapped a leg in the process. But I pretty much covered, I covered the route, some parts planned from 13th and Burnside all the way up here.
Hillside Boulevard was funded by the property owners of the land it went through, those owners seeing pretty large dollar signs from the hillside homes they were to build. This route also would provide access to a place in the hills that had previously been untraveled, and it was thought that this could become, as it was called, America's foremost scenic boulevard. The route was made wide, as it was even considered possible that a streetcar line could run through there someday. People were excited, and this Stark extension only made things a little more exciting. But before the end of 1915, there were already problems, as the road was deemed dangerous in parts, with large rocks tumbling down onto it from time to time. That was only the start of what would end up being a tumultuous history of this road known as Hillside Boulevard.
And yeah, they were going to build all these homes through here, and they didn't think about how the land is, and there was landslides all the time, and it was just, they were constantly having to close this road, try to fix it, open it, close it, try to fix it, open it. But with that route, or I guess this route, being practically brand new, you could come down off Aspen onto Thurman, and then you could take this route as far north as Germantown Road. And there was a few side streets you could turn off of if you wanted to get to another specific location. So this was a very key aspect of the overall extension plan. And I guess another reason it's good that this thing didn't really pan out, because this street had so many problems. And with how often they had to close it down, it would have been a pain. It would have been, they do all this work to get people from downtown to like right here, and then they can't progress any further half the time because the road was completely closed. So I guess another positive behind this project not actually happening.
After being closed for repairs by 1921, the boulevard already appeared abandoned, with landslides becoming a frequent issue. With shaky grounds, the major real estate developments along there never materialized either, leaving it mostly unused for years. It would be fixed up and opened and then closed again, over and over and over again. The same cycle over the years. And even after it was renamed Leif Erikson Drive in the 1930s, these problems persisted. By the 1970s, the drive was closed to traffic, and since then has been used for foot traffic, as it still is today. Imagine building a beautiful and expensive bridge over Macleay Park, only to have its primary purpose cut off after just a couple of years at best, and leaving most commuters either having to go back the way they came or use the other nearby bridge in the area on Thurman Street to abruptly depart from the area. But as of 1915, this was set to be one of the largest projects the city had ever undertaken. The extension portion of Stark would be 80 feet wide, wider than the mostly 60 feet wide streets in town, and if successful, it could have achieved the same significance as the likes of a Burnside or Washington Street. Come April 1916, the outlined plans for this extension were completed, and an isometric map was produced for papers showing elevation changes in the area. This showed another advantage of the Stark Street plan in that, unlike taking Burnside and turning down 23rd to get to Cornell, Stark would have traveled at a more steady elevation and would have got commuters to Cornell much faster just based on distance. And while I've discussed the project a lot in terms of going from the city to outlying areas, as this is how the project gradually developed, from a few blocks in the city to a several-mile plan, there were obvious benefits to traffic going into the city as well. A major hope for proponents of the plan was to open a fast route to more distant places in the northwest of the city. With the use of Cornell, those from out west as well as from the north could access the middle of the city with relative ease. A Stark Street Improvement Association was established to help push and promote the project, and as quickly as they formed, there was some fresh resistance, including several property owners storming the city's Chamber of Commerce to profess their distaste for the project. The likes of the Improvement Association members criticized their opposition by noting they wanted business and for them to be successful, but rejected the kind of improvements needed to make such things happen. The Improvement Association's concerns went so far that they even felt if this project fell through, it could drive some business all the way over to the east side of the river. They were really pushing this thing, mostly motivated again by the dollar signs that they were seeing. But a key argument in those that were critical of the project was that the Improvement Association was acting almost entirely in secret and pushing the city to take abrupt action without any serious input from other property owners, as well as possible concerned citizens. This resistance led to the city making a surprising decision to indefinitely postpone the project. While this early planning and outlining had been done, there was still a lot of other work that would need to be done to make sure the project was viable. Instead, it was tabled, and even at the time, it was felt this decision would likely lead to the project not being revived for some time, whereas in the past, the attitude was that it was imperative that it happen, and businesses along this extension would only help the local economy. And yet the city abruptly shut it down. This would be the beginning of the end of the Stark Street Extension project. While specifics as to why the project was tabled were not expressed at this time, I believe two key things affected this. One was the fact that the property owners had been split and bickering about this for a few years at this point, keeping such a project from moving forward in an amicable fashion. Beyond that, money from the city, as well as property owners, had already been invested in looking into the project, and here it was, stagnant, and only asking to be a further money pit for the city. And these issues very well may have tied into a final decision reached by the City Council a couple years later. The Stark Street Improvement Association would continue to function, and come March 1919, they petitioned to revive this project, noting that so much prep work had already been done, so it would be easy to start back up. The project was referred to the City Planning Commission for a preliminary report on the matter, and there were still serious matters of zoning and the effects on future traffic routes to consider. Those against the project sought an extended time period for this work, as they felt in a rushed scenario, the City Council would inevitably side in favor of the project. That may have been a bit presumptuous, as on an April 9th, 1919 council meeting, Commissioner C.A. Bigelow made a motion to flat-out deny the petition for the project, a motion which would be seconded. At this time, Commissioner Asbury Barber suggested a public hearing be held on the matter. Bigelow withdrew his motion, with it still being felt the odds of this project happening were long, as the council believed less than a majority were actually in support of it. And they were right. The public hearing did not move the needle, and on April 25th, the council put aside the project again with a standing resolution that it could only be revived again if more than 40% of the property owners in the affected area petitioned for it. So again, the city saw this as an ongoing standstill with the property owners and something not worth dumping more money into unless people started getting on the same page. Proponents would continue to fight to make it happen, but every time found themselves up against that 40+% resolution that the council was not going to waver on. An effort was made in November 1921 when some of the opposition from before, including one of its leaders, a John R. Latourette, started coming around in support of the project. A public hearing was held on December 7th, with many property owners showing up and wanting survey work done. The city's response? Get more than 40% support. And it looks like they could just never reach that mark, and without it, the project faded away. But hey, at least a few years later, that little Stark extension from 12th to 13th happened, so small victories, I guess. I have seldom been so convinced that something created a long time ago would most definitely be gone by now, as I have felt with this particular project. As I discussed in my video about John Couch and his addition, Burnside Street has an extensive history of congestion problems, especially before it was widened at the start of the 1930s. Imagine a six-way intersection with Stark crossing Burnside at 13th Avenue, and then imagine that extension crossing diagonally across several other intersections, especially with the auto boom really taking off in the 1920s. I also mentioned how it would have cut between Burnside and Cooch when crossing the I-405 freeway. This would have made it so congested through there that by the time of I-405's construction during the 60s, I feel the Stark Street extension would have just been cut off through here. And even if it resumed from 15th and Cooch, this break would have defeated the whole purpose of that extension. And while the idea was to provide a direct route to Cornell Road and beyond, and vice versa, the idea that Stark would have, again, passed directly through several intersections perhaps wasn't seen as all that big of an issue back in 1915. But imagine that today. It would have been cluster after cluster. And that's the thing. All of the perceived benefits of this extension were predicated on the idea that it would be a busy stretch, but not a congested one. I have little doubt this extension would have been closed down, and perhaps not very long after it was created, and the land would have either been redeveloped as regular blocks with new buildings, or perhaps, my dream scenario, the stretch could have been converted into another park blocks type setup, perhaps with some businesses set up around them, at least on some of the blocks. Just something I personally would have liked to have seen in a perfect world. If completed, the project also would have altered the character of the Willamette Heights area, bringing more traffic through there, but likely not for long with all of the trouble that Hillside Boulevard faced. And with all of the traffic issues this project would have created, it still would have been sad to see that cool arch bridge built over Macleay Park, likely either to fall into disrepair or get closed down when, with Hillside's problems, it would have become little more than a nuisance to the residents of Willamette Heights. And another significant consequence of this project would have been the architecture that would have been destroyed and or never built. I took a look back at 1909 era Sanborn fire maps to get a fairly accurate look at what existed on these blocks around the time this project was discussed. The most significant place to be lost would have been the mansion home of Richard Knapp, which stood on the full block between Davis and Everett Streets and 17th and 18th Avenues. I actually shot a short for my YouTube channel here as I was shooting video for this film. So psyched by rediscovering this spot I'd found a few years earlier that it didn't occur to me at the time that the extension would have cut right through here. Years later, this land would be purchased by the nearby St. Mary's Cathedral, and the home would be torn down. This cathedral, based on its placement on the map, would have survived this extension by the skin of its teeth. The blocks from 19th and Everett onto 24th and Johnson were lined with residences, many of which would have been demolished or at least altered considerably. And those that would have survived would have had the reward of a busy street for a backyard. And there were still residences onward to 25th and Kearney, and there was a small gap between buildings from there on to Lovejoy and Cornell that maybe the street could have fit between. This would have also drastically altered an area with, in my opinion, the best collection of apartment buildings in the whole Portland area. The large Embassy at 20th and Flanders probably would have never been built, at least not here. And several others, including some that had only recently been built, would have also been torn down or would have never been built in the first place. Simply put, we're probably all a little relieved that the former Stark Street never went any further than Burnside.